Right. Yeah. Yeah. Really listening to people, huh?
Yeah, when your tenants are telling you they can't get to the bank or they can't get here because they don't have a car or their car broke down, and by the hundredth time you've heard it, it's kind of like, why isn't someone doing something about that?
So, what do you find is 80, I think it's 85% of Americans say they want to write their own book one day is a figure that has stuck in my mind. And I find it kind of funny. So what advice would you give to someone who maybe has always said that, but doesn't know how to get started and doesn't really know what to put in it about their life or about their biography? How do you get started in that process of putting that down?
Just start writing. That's what I tell everyone. Just start writing. Don't overcomplicate it. The first thing that comes to your mind, think about one of the most memorable times in your life, whatever it was, why ever, and just start writing it. You'll be amazed what happens once that starts coming out. Other ideas are going to pop in your head, and that's where kind of you need a little bit of self control to not chase the rabbit down the holes. Um, I'm very big on, hey, if another story jumps in your mind, bullet point it. Christmas of 2022. And then keep writing what you sat down to write. Something else jumps in your head, bullet point it. Now, by the time you're done, I did this with my own kind of biography that may or may never see the light of day. And off of one event that I wrote about kind of just personally for therapy. It didn't start as a biography. It just started as, hey, I want to write about that event for like therapeutic purposes. Next thing I know, I had like 47 bullet points of other things I could write about.
Right. Okay. So you have, do you have different, maybe it sounds like that's a product, level that you offer, maybe like, do you have different product levels that you cater to, and as far as what your offering is?
I mean, generally, if we're doing the ghostwriting, so from a service standpoint, we do the coaching, which is where the client does all the writing. They just meet with me every week or every other week. Um, so I hold them accountable. I help guide them. I read, kind of developmentally edit as we go along. Um, then on the opposite end is the full blown ghostwriting. In any case, the first thing we do is we start with a strategy, figure out who the book is for, what their intended outcome is, how they're going to determine whether or not they succeeded in what their mission was for writing the book, and then straight through to completion. Almost every one of my projects, I guide them, as I just told you, my rule of thumb is that 175 to 250 page mark. If someone's like, hey, my book's going to be substantially less, I'll tailor the price to, because obviously I'm doing much less writing. And if someone has a need or a strong desire to do more than 250 pages, I'll do it.
Great. Great. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for joining me today, and welcome back to everybody else to another episode of Define Your Purpose. And joining me today is Matt Harms. Matt has a lot of projects that he's working on right now, so I don't exactly know which name is better to call you by here with all the hats. So tell me about what are you doing right now with Pen for Hire then? How's that been?
You know, it's been good. The last couple of years, we started at the outset of COVID. So I mean, talk about a bad time to start a business. But I feel like in a way it was much needed because there were so many people home or idle and didn't know what to do. So picking up that book project they might have been thinking about doing for years seemed more viable. So that we hit the ground running, coaching people, helping them by ghostwriting when needed. And, it took a little bit of a lull in the last probably year or so. Now that everyone's back in full swing and distracted with in-person stuff. But I got a couple great projects wrapping up in the next couple months. Which I don't want to go into specific details and tie up your whole thing, but a lot of interesting people, a lot of great inspirational stories of people finding their purpose, trying to give back. Things that I think are in full alignment with what you do, Karl.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Well, as someone who has studied English literature, I know that writing can be really difficult for a lot of people. So I have to ask you how you got started and what made you want to do writing when you were younger, maybe.
Yeah, so I mean that's really a funny story because when I was growing up as a kid, I always thought of myself as becoming a writer. I would sit in my room and write stories, just fill those marble composition notebooks with the most random fictional stories. Then in high school, I transitioned into selling term papers to people for money, and I was like, wow, this is going to be my job. But growing up in the Bronx, I was told that working class family, that's not a real job. I had to go to college, be one of the first in the family to get a degree. Um, so I studied finance for the pure fact that it sounded like it would make me a lot of money. And I've had no formal writing training at all. In my mind, I was like, why am I going to spend all this tuition money to study English when I already know how to write? Um, so spent the next 15 years or so in all facets of financial services, hated every minute of it. And right before the pandemic, got back into writing by chance. Met a gentleman who was a business coach and an Amazon best-selling author. He needed a book written. He found out I had written a few of my own books and made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Money for service.
Wow, no kidding. That's great. That's a what a great story. So you got kind of suckered back into it, into doing it
Yeah,
again after
and
spending all that time.
disproved everything anyone had told me. It was like, wow. But you know what? In fairness, it wasn't the way I envisioned, right? I envisioned writing books and being like Stephen King, collecting royalty checks. So the books I wrote myself really haven't amounted to a whole lot of money. But this was a whole side of writing I never even thought about. And it's incredibly lucrative.
Right? So how did it take off then after that first job? What did you start doing?
So I think I did a pretty good job because that gentleman started referring me to all of the thought leaders he knew. As a business coach, he was coaching pretty much my ideal demographic, people who had knowledge, inspiration, motivation that they wanted to share. So I started working on their projects. All and I think what really helped me is that I didn't know ghostwriting was a profession, so I never approached anything as here's how it works and it's a one size fits all type of model. If I had people who could maybe write on their own, I would serve as more of a coach and just motivate them, guide them into the right way to put a book together. If they had some time and some writing skill, we would collaborate. They'd write half the book, I'd write the other half. And then I'd probably say about 75% of the people were just like, nope, Matt, I can't write. It's all up here. Even if I could, I don't have the time. And I would just interview them. This job is very much part therapist, part counselor, part priest, rabbi. You listen to people's life story and then turn it into words on paper.
Oh, great. So that was almost my next question is who are you doing all the writing for? But it sounds like it's all life story stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe I shouldn't have said life story. Like, yeah, they're telling me about their life story, but the focus isn't on why they're so great, what they've done. It's really more the teaching point of the things they've learned along the way that can help other people, usually in business. So to give you an example, I have a gentleman who is a veterinarian and was a U.S. Ranger sniper. And his book is on all the different ways he overcame adversity to put himself through veterinary school, all the way up to the point where he's at now, running one of the largest veterinary hospitals in the country. I've got another gentleman who's was a professional boxer who had never stepped in a boxing ring until he was 20 and then wound up on the U.S. Olympic team.
Awesome. Great. Jeez. Some of these must just write themselves. It sounds like it would be so fun to write.
So sometimes the hardest part of my job is figuring out what makes the cut and what doesn't.
Right.
Because we're not trying to write an encyclopedia. It's got to be right. Kind of, I subscribe to the 175 to 250 page mark. So it's not too small. It's not overwhelming. And sometimes you just really got to say, you know what? While that's great, I don't know that it serves a place in this book.
Right. Okay. So you have do you have different maybe it sounds like that's a product level that you offer maybe like do you have different product levels that you cater to and as far as what your offering is?
I mean, generally, if we're doing the ghostwriting, so from a service standpoint, we do the coaching, which is where the client does all the writing. They just meet with me every week or every other week. Um, so I hold them accountable. I help guide them. I read, kind of developmentally edit as we go along. Um, then I, on the opposite end, is the full blown ghostwriting. In any case, the first thing we do is we start with a strategy, figure out who the book is for, what their intended outcome is, how they're going to determine whether or not they succeeded in what their mission was for writing the book, and then straight through to completion. Almost every one of my projects, I guide them, as I just told you, my rule of thumb is that 175 to 250 page mark. If someone's like, hey, my book's going to be substantially less, I'll tailor the price to, because obviously I'm doing much less writing. And if someone has a need or a strong desire to do more than 250 pages, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Cool. Great. Wow, neat. So you mentioned some other projects that you've expanded out into. Did this writing get you into that and meeting all these people through the writing get you involved in these other projects, or maybe you can talk a little bit about what you're working on?
So honestly, I wouldn't say that it got me into the other projects, but it definitely rekindled that entrepreneurial spirit that I had when I was younger. That college and the real world sucked from my body. Um, right? You know, the world is very straight. Like, you got to get a job, you got to go to college, you got to do this, and then you wind up in that box of, well, the paycheck is nice. But after Pen for Hire started doing so well, I was like, wow, there's like, I don't understand why I'm not doing different things. And really, I've always been into real estate. So that was just a natural progression of what can I do in real estate? Started doing some Airbnb rentals, which then turned into building a long term rental portfolio. Managed that successfully for like a year or two, which then branched into, well, if I can manage my own properties, I can manage other people's properties. So we started adding property management. And then in the geographic area I was doing that, identified a serious need for transportation. It's actually in a part of the country where there's no Uber, there's no Lyft, there's no DoorDash. We saw that need and we made it a point to start filling it. So now since January, we've got two vehicles on the road. One's a 14-seater shuttle van. We do airport service. We do local pickup and drop off, people to their doctor's appointments, date night, birthday parties, you name it.
Wow, great. What a void that must fill for the people there. What's your town again? Where are you?
So I'm actually located in Yonkers, right outside of New York City. But all of those businesses are located in northeastern Pennsylvania in the Pocono Mountains.
Oh, okay. I'm really surprised that none of those services that you mentioned actually go there and have business there.
I was blown away. The closest place you're going to get an Uber is Scranton, where our president is from, which is about 40 minutes away. And they generally will not come that far to where all the resort areas are. Like, they just won't do it.
Wow. Jeez. Good news for you. It turned out to be.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to even pretend I'm the smartest guy in the room. It's just paying attention, right? Like realizing where there's a need and then figuring out if you can solve that need.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Really listening to people, huh?
Yeah. When your tenants are telling you they can't get to the bank or they can't get here because they don't have a car or their car broke down, and by the 100th time you've heard it, it's kind of like, why isn't someone doing something about that?
Right. Yeah. It probably helps with the real estate to be giving everybody rides.
My partner and I joke, but yeah, if someone says, "Oh, I can't make it to work," why not? There's a car service. I couldn't make it to the bank to deposit my rent check. Why not? There's a car service.
Right. Awesome. That's great. So, um, I wonder if you were trying to get back to where you are now, what would you do differently?
The big thing I would do differently is not listen to anybody else. And I don't mean that in a conceited, like I know everything type of way, because we all need coaches, we all need mentors. We know people, we need people who have done what we're looking to do. But I wouldn't listen to anybody who wasn't doing what I wanted to do. Right? I tell everybody, if you want to be a writer, which I did, I shouldn't have been taking advice from people who had never written more than their own name.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. It almost makes you critical of people who just become teachers. You try not to be, but that's why I think it's good to have people who are really accomplished in the classroom. People who have done the things that you want to do, but lots of times those people are off doing things. So,
I spoke to this heavily in my first book. The world needs everybody. We need teachers, we need garbage men, we need police officers. So there's really nothing wrong with any profession out there if it's what you want to do. But if you're only doing it because somebody else told you to do it and you have no idea why and you just get up every day counting the days to retirement and you're only 21 years old, that's not such a good situation.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, I think any of those jobs too, you can find more meaning in what you're doing by helping other people. You can you can have the most basic job, but if you're really helping people, then it can be really fulfilling. Even if you're just holding a door open for people, just going out of the way for people and not expecting in return, I think it can be fulfilling. It comes back to you.
And it shows. I mean, we've all encountered people in any number of roles where you can just tell the person's not happy. They don't want to be doing it. They're there because they don't feel like they have a choice. The people who genuinely enjoy what they do, it shows.
Right. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think hearing other people's stories can help people get through those things, those difficult times like that. Finding an example, I think that we are hardwired to learn through stories, just based on survival and all of our existence. Every bit of our survival has been our ability to relate in stories to each other. The food's over there, the lion's over there, the water's down there.
Yeah, and you never know. I mean, who needs to hear that voice and when? I've got a gentleman who's he was a professional hockey player and was told in college he would never play on their team and refused to quit. Showed up every day, put in more work than everyone else, made the varsity team, progressed to right below the NHL. And when we started working together, I just knew how many kids need to hear that story. Because is it going to happen to everybody? No. But if it happened to him, it can happen to you if you put in the work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Your biggest setbacks and what at first seem like your big failures can be turned into your biggest success stories. It just depends on how you look at it and if you're willing to put in the work, I think, like you say. So I, I wonder, what are maybe some of the greatest lessons that you've learned working with clients, or maybe what kind of sticks in your mind lately that you've found with the clients?
Um, Man, that's a good question. So I guess from my clients, on the good note, I have learned that for the most part, people are grateful, they're appreciative, and they have no problem. When you've done something for them that they're happy with, they can become your best advocates. Most of my business these days is from referrals from clients, from past clients, or even current clients who are on their second or third project. So that was reassuring, because the other thing that I learned, unfortunately, is the negative side of entrepreneurship is a lot of people really don't care about you. You are just a means to an end, or you're just a number, somebody they can, you know, avoid paying. Like, oh, the project's over. I'm going to forget that last paycheck I owe you.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. It can be tough for sure.
Yeah, it's really a balancing act of, I'm not big on contracts, and like, if I want to work with you, it's because I feel like you're a good person and I trust you, and there's no need for that. But then it hurts even more when that's the person that doesn't pay you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think maybe the a critical part of your work also might be drawing the stories out of people and getting them to tell their own story and see the power in that. Is that, would you agree with that? Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah, that's what I alluded to before when I said this job is like part counselor, part therapist, part priest. Because if you can't get people talking or comfortable talking, there's no way they can write a book, right? And you have to infuse some, even though it's a business book or a personal development book, you have to infuse some of that person's persona, their voice, their experiences. Like, the reader has to be able to relate to them, not just what they know, because there's a million books written on every topic. What makes one person resonate with one book about dieting and not another? Because there's a connection to the author usually.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think people connect with your failures too. So it's important to share that stuff as well.
No one wants to hear how great you are all the time. They want to know that you screwed up.
So what do you find is a 80, I think it's 85% of Americans say they want to write their own book one day, is a figure that has stuck in my mind. And I find it kind of funny. So if what advice would you give to someone who maybe has always said that but doesn't know how to get started and doesn't really know what to put in it about their life or about their biography? How do you get started in that process of putting that down?
Just start writing. That's what I tell everyone. Just start writing. Don't overcomplicate it. The first thing that comes to your mind, think about one of the most memorable times in your life, whatever it was, why ever, and just start writing it. You'll be amazed what happens once that starts coming out. Other ideas are going to pop in your head, and that's where kind of you need a little bit of self control to not chase the rabbit down the holes. Um, I'm very big on, hey, if another story jumps in your mind, bullet point it. Christmas of 2022. And then keep writing what you sat down to write. Something else jumps in your head, bullet point it. Now, by the time you're done, I did this with my own kind of biography that may or may never see the light of day. And off of one event that I wrote about kind of just personally for therapy, it didn't start as a biography. It just started as, hey, I want to write about that event for like therapeutic purposes. Next thing I know, I had like 47 bullet points of other things I could write about.
Mm, awesome. Yeah, I think you take ownership of something when you write about it in your past in a way. I mean, I found that I also, in order to be able to finish, I had to write when I didn't feel like writing. And that would be like half the time, and I just have to keep doing it anyway because I schedule the time and schedule out the chapters and decide that this was when I needed to have the stuff done. Have you had to make decisions like that or help people make decisions like that?
Karl, that's one of the first principles in my coaching, and in my own life, is if you don't schedule the time to write, you're never going to write. and you can't trick yourself, and you can't schedule it at, if you don't get out of bed till 8 o'clock in the morning, you can't trick yourself and put it on your calendar for 6 a.m. because it won't happen. And vice versa. Don't stick it on your calendar when you're busy with your kids. You got to put it at a reasonable time that you can do it. And then you need to sit in front of your computer or your notebook, whatever it is you're writing in, for the full time you scheduled. I don't care if you write a word or 1,000 words. Keep that appointment. Some days are going to be better than others. Right? I write 30, 40,000 words sometimes a week between all the projects that I work on. And I have times where I'll sit in front of my computer for an hour and literally write nothing. I can't figure out what to write. I stare at the words that are there, and everything is just like glazed over. And then there's times I can just write for 4 hours straight and my fingers never stop moving. But you can never plan for when that's going to happen. So you have to make sure that you're showing up.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Good point. That's right. Um, so I wonder, also, if people maybe are struggling for things to write about. Do you ever do journaling prompts? I mean, you must be someone who preaches journaling, the benefits of that and all.
So, I'm a big fan of journaling, but I can't believe it. Honestly, Carl, no one has ever come to me. I guess maybe just because I am that stage where you want to write a book and you kind of have some idea of what it's going to be about. But I've literally never had a single person come to me and say, I want to write a book, but I have no idea what I want to write about.
Hmm. Okay. Interesting. Well, I've heard some people say that journaling, after you do it for long enough, that your own voice becomes kind of your instruction for what to do in your life, and it kind of changes after you do it long enough. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was going to use an analogy before. Our heads, and now I don't know how I'm going to answer your question exactly, but I'm going to say it anyway and see if I got it. There's only so much we can keep in our brain, right? So it meant like you keep cramming things in there. Eventually, if you want to have new experiences and new thoughts, you've got to get the old out of your head. So sometimes by writing it, whether it's going to be published or not, just journaling, kind of like that, the biography that I started writing didn't start as a biography. Once these things get out of your head, I have clients tell me all the time when we write their business book, like they feel like they have so much more space to go and start the next like chapter of their life because they're not holding all of this inside anymore. It now lives somewhere else.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, what a great feeling. That's a reason to be writing right there.
Absolutely lose mental weight.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, great. So, what are you planning for this year coming up? Do you just growing each of your projects out? Do you have maybe specific goals in mind that you're focused on achieving?
I've got a lot. We say a short list, but it's a growing long list of bigger things that I'd like to accomplish. One of them that I've been working on for a year is getting Pen for Hire to a point where I can franchise it. So kind of get other writers who want to do what I'm doing in different geographic parts of the country or world, and then plug them into my system. Exactly what my interview process is, what my outlining process is, what my strategy process is, all of the infrastructure I use in terms of technology, and really just how to make this a viable business, because you're only as good as the last book you've written. And I can only write but so many books a year, which means unless I keep raising my prices, my income is limited from this business. So that's probably the biggest thing I really want to get off the ground is franchise that. So not only for my own benefit, but also for people who want books. I don't want to have to turn people away because I'm at capacity.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's a great idea. I mean, I was a broke English major who just graduated from college once and didn't know what to do. So that would be a huge help to be an English major who just graduated. Um, it sounds like you could really help a lot of people with that business. Great, great, awesome. Um, well, I wonder, it was there. Are there other things you wanted to talk about, or is there something I didn't ask about that you wanted to go over maybe while we were talking?
No, I mean we're good on my end. I'd like to ask you a question though. Tell everyone a little bit about your experience writing your own book, because I think people hear me talk about writing all the time, and it's like, oh well, this is what you do for a career. Of course, it's you make it sound easy and anyone can do it, but you're an English major, but it is your first book, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I actually co-authored it with a friend that I met on LinkedIn, and he's from India, and so we put together an outline um, together as to what the chapters would be, and then it was like I would write half and he would write half, and then we'd kind of go back and forth to finalize the chapters. Um, so it's still not completed with publishing yet, so it should be. Sometimes that can be such a process, and I'm thinking any week now, we should be done. So um, then I'll have it ready. So each one of the chapters is also a book in itself, because each one is a subject relating to, or from authentic, a part of authentic self, a part of yourself, I guess. And so there's exercises at the end of each chapter that you can go through to try to, I guess, improve. You could call it a personal development book. So I wanted to put together something like that was more interactive rather than something that people could just read and put down. But I wanted to, I wanted it also to not just be, kind of a woo woo memoir sort of thing. Like, I wanted it to be a real usable actual book that people could do something with that would make a difference to people. And so that's what I had in mind when I started putting together the outline for it. And so I maybe to help prove the whole foundation of your business here, I found it very helpful to be writing with somebody else and be having ideas to play off of, and um, be challenging each other to get the deadlines done. So I think that it sounds like, you do exactly those things with people, and so I highly recommend having a accountability partner like that.
I love that because yeah, it doesn't have to be a paid coach. It doesn't have to be a professional writer. It can be a co-author. It can be an accountability buddy, just somebody to bounce ideas off of. And I mean, one of the things I tell people when they say they want to write a book, as advice is let everyone you know that you're writing a book, because no one's ever going to forget that. And that's only if you're serious, because people are going to ask you every time they see you, how's that book coming along? And now you're kind of locked into making sure at some point you go, it's done.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I did the same thing. I totally did not want to be that person that just had this endless book project for years and years. Oh, I'm still working on my book. Yep, the book. And all your friends get sick of hearing it. I did not want that to happen to me. So I guess maybe that's when people go get help too, is when they've had a project that's been kind of languishing for a long time.
Yeah. I actually just helped a gentleman who wrote his book over the course of 40 years. I mean, he came to me with 270 pages, 100 something thousand words. And all I did was help him put the pieces in order, right? 40 years worth of writing. Obviously, you can imagine it's going to be a little bit fragmented. There's going to be gaps and starts and stops. So I took all his basically his life's work and helped organize it into 35 easily connected and readable chapters.
Mm, right. Yeah. Well, and when you just hear about that anonymously and you think about some of the great authors, imagine how much they would have not written had they never finished that first work and just kept plugging away at the first work, trying to make it perfect and trying to put everything into that first work. How many books would not have been written if everybody did that? I don't mean to criticize your friend or anything, but
No, no. I mean, I don't know that he was ever intentionally writing it for publication, whatever the case may be. But in general, that's another piece of advice I give. Progress, not perfection. I'd rather you just get it all out. I don't care how sloppy it is. I don't care how the spelling is. In fact, for me, I write by hand because I don't like to get distracted by the squiggly red line. Just I want it to get out of my head. If you have to have something perfect, you will never finish your book. Obviously, once it's done, yes, please get a professional editor and make sure it's perfect. But that is not until you feel like you've written the last word.
Mhm. Yeah. Do you ever use much dictation or have much luck with that?
So for me, because I write by hand, I absolutely live by the Google Speak to Talk in the Google Documents. So after I've written or filled a notebook, I am not the fastest typer in the world. So I will read what I wrote and let Google transcribe it for me.
Oh, interesting. Okay. But you never just go off the cuff and dictate right to Google, huh?
No, I can't. My brain does not work that way. For me to get the thought out, it has to be like through the pencil, and it has to be a pencil.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that I've messed around with lately is having help from AI as far as writing frameworks. Do you ever, and coming up with ideas as far as it's better than looking at a blank page sometimes. Have you ever found that, or messed around with any um, ideation with AI instead of with a person?
AI can be your best friend as long as you use it properly. As you just said, writing prompts. If you need to get some information on specific, maybe time period pieces that you're writing, it's a great tool to really cut the time you need to spend researching or ideating. But that's about where that ends. I draw the line to people who try to use it to create a book.
Yeah, yeah, because you're supposed to be expressing yourself. So when you stop doing that, then you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing anymore. You're not doing it. Yeah, I agree with you. So I guess if people want to get some help right away and get a hold of you, your website would be the best place to find you.
Yeah, penforhire.com, penforhire. You can always just email me, Matt at penforhirenyc, like in New York City.com. Those would be the two best places to get me, but we're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I think we're still on Instagram. I don't know. I don't manage my own social media because it detracts from writing. But website and email are always the best way to get directly to me.
Great, awesome, awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me today, Matt. Really enjoyed our conversation. um, yeah, yeah. I'll probably have some events coming up, so maybe you can join me on an event and be a guest. And
Absolutely. Let's stay in touch. Shoot me anytime you have anything coming up. Let me know. We'll make sure my assistant can help me get it on the calendar.
awesome. Okay, great.
Fantastic. Thank you, Karl.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. You too. Thank you.